Well, we're here today with a legend of the comic book space, about to be a record-breaking comic book space legend.
Right.
We got to talk about Spawn 300 and then 301
Right.
makes you the #1 longest-running creator-owned book in history.
In history, around the globe, from the dawn of man to today, right?
How's that feel, man?
Look at it. It was. I knew this day was going to come, and so I remember asking Eric Stevenson, publisher at Image, should I just make the big book, not 300, because that ties the record. What if I just make the triple size issue 301? Because that's the record setter, right?
Yeah.
To me, set the record, go, that's why you should be buying this book. It's a record setter, and people would be curious going, why 301? And then you'd have to sort of educate them. But we eventually, after conversation, just said, the buyers and the retailers are so used to these
300 being
these anniversary numbers, 100, 200, 300, whatever, that it's like if you don't get the message across, it might confuse them a little bit. But I did it in a two-part. There's a cliffhanger at the end of 300 that goes into 301, so that basically, to me, they should be buying both of those at the same rate. But to me, the story that I'm trying to get out a little bit isn't about Spawn, isn't about me, isn't about Image. It's about these stories that I've read my whole life, where all of a sudden, and a lot of them come in the business section, that you just sort of hear about somebody who railed against the system, who railed against the giants, and they lived to tell about it, right? And they had enough success that they got to basically live their own life, right? And so that's, to me, out of anything I want anybody to walk away with, it's just that. Because if you get that piece, then it doesn't matter to me that you can draw or write or color a comic book. That's irrelevant. That's just the product that I'm pushing. It's called comic book. What should be sort of more of I'm hoping a bit of an inspiration is that you're looking at a human being that went against big companies, both in the toy industry and in the comic book, and did something 25, 27, 30 years ago, and 30 years later is still there doing it and had to make very few compromises along the way. I'm not saying everything I did was right. I'm not saying, we're not talking about right and wrong. I'm just saying that if you have an idea and you have an inspiration, you want to peddle something, and so everybody's telling you no, because the system will always tell you no because they don't want competition, right? Nobody's ever said, hey, you got a product that will compete against me? Oh, here, let me get out of your way. No. They will put barricades up there. But if you fight every day for it, you can be 30 years later still doing it. And Spawn number 300, 27 years after the release of Spawn 1, is going to be the #1 selling book in the country.
Easily.
So okay, it's not like it's down there. It's going to pop again, going, we're still relevant, right? So it's doable.
And Image Comics now, which was a force of nature, caused an entire shift in the comic space and continues to with all these Eisner noms. You guys aren't just like the comic property that everyone wants to work for. You're also winning the awards that everyone seeks after because you rebelled against the cause and because you said no to the man. And all that was a foundation of gathering the best of the best and making a team that worked for the people.
Well, look, I mean, getting the best of the best is, that's awesome. Right? But just getting good, creative, talented people who knows, there may be diamonds in the rough right now that may be the next set of the next generation superstars, right? I mean, you got to start them someplace.
Do you feel like that's why Image is so successful still? It's finding the people that'll work the hardest, that'll make the big choices?
Well, yeah. Image is an interesting company because we don't own anything, so the one thing we can't do is tell people to meet their deadlines, right? It's the one frustrating part that we give you so much freedom, you can even basically fail on your own merits if you choose to do so, right? It wouldn't be my choice, but you go ahead and do it. But we're an opportunity for people who want to basically come in, either that have worked in the systems, Marvel or DC or whoever, and then want to try their own hand at doing something creative, or people who will never get into those companies, nor do they even have any aspirations to, because their books aren't superhero stories, right? I mean, our books, we do close to 70 books a month. They're very eclectic, right? We have a wide range of books, and some of them are very eclectic. And those people aren't trying to tell stories so that it will then get them a job on Superman or Batman, right? They're just telling these sort of super personal stories. And I go up on stage, and I'm going to do it again on Saturday, and I'm going to give them the dad speech, the hallelujah speech of that I think today is the best day to be doing independent comic books. And although I used to say you could if you're as long as you're number 140 and the other 139 are Marvel and DC, you're going to be number one. So let me deal with the reality of what I just said, because it's becoming truer every month. Last month, and I'm talking about if you want to do comic books and you can make, a decent money, but if you're looking to sort of see if you're going to, aspire to things that are outside of just comic books, if you have that sort of whim. Of the top 100 books, 95 of them were either Marvel or DC. Okay, so Warner Brothers doesn't share, and Disney's not going to be sharing. So if your name isn't Disney or Warner Brothers, then and you're either ABC, NBC, CBS, a streaming company, or some internet company, or cable, or the 1,000 producers that sit in that city called Hollywood, who are all looking for content, and they say we got to come up with some comic book stuff. Of the top 100 ideas, or at least sales, 95 of them are off limits. You got you have to redact them. So there's only 5 left.
Oh,
okay, so let's
idea.
talk about last month. There was only 5 left.
Yeah.
Right. In the top 50, there's only 2. One's called Walking Dead, sold, right? The other one's Spawn, not for sale.
Yeah.
The next one then is Saga, already sold.
Yep.
And then there's one that was Archie, owned by Warner Brothers, and then there's another one that has already been optioned. So I'm telling you, of the top 100 books, 0 is for sale.
Yeah.
If you're anybody other than Warner Brothers and Disney, 0. Okay. I started going through it. The first book and I don't even know if it's true. I should phone the creator that I don't know if they actually have a deal with anybody, is 108, and then the next one is 122. So I go, if you're 122, you're the second
Most
best
adaptable property.
You're the second best available property to dozens and dozens and dozens of corporations and thousands potentially producers, right? So this joke that I used to make, you can be 140, is now completely true now, that your goal should be, if you want to do an independent comic book, your goal should be, can I get to 108? Because if you get to 108, you're going to be gold. You're going to be gold. If you're anywhere between 108 and 200, you're still going to be gold.
It's like batting 300. Like if you hit 1 out of 3, you're in a good spot.
Gosh.
Like it ties all together.
It's good. It's
and
good.
like Paper Girls, you guys just got adapted. Like that's moving to Amazon, and Saga is selling like crazy. And what Image has done is built a foundation for creatives to be creative.
Right.
And that's what I love about it. And 300 is happening for you because of that 27 years ago.
Yeah, just 27 years. Right. Let's say the word again. 27 years.
But that's making it happen for a long time.
It's funny because I was talking to Robert Kirkman the other day, because he recently canceled the Walking Dead, right? Brilliantly, right? And again, I'm going, why don't you go to 200? And go, Todd, why are you with these big round numbers and stuff like that? Anyways, we're having this conversation with him, but he's going, at 193, he goes, for me to even think about 300, which is where you're going, he goes, Todd, I have to add 10 more years. He's not off. That's about 10 more years.
Yeah.
He goes, I'll blow my brains out if I got to go 10 more years. Like he goes, I've told my story. I'm good. And I want to do it. And it's time for me to move on and do whatever else. Right. So I go, the success of Image has always been for me that you, the creative person, get to do whatever you want with the story, with the art, how long you want it to be. You want to do it for 10 years, you want to do it for 10 minutes. You want to make toys out of it, you don't. You want to sell it to Hollywood, make a video game, you don't. You think that that's selling out. All of that is on you. Yeah. And every time the creator on their own book gets to make the decision personally, that's the victory tally for me. Not that they got the deal, not that it went and made a lot of money for them on TV or whatever, just that they were able to say the yeses and the nos themselves. Check every single time.
Yeah,
right?
that's what art's about. It's yours.
Yeah, it's yours, right?
Now, speaking of being rebellious with art, I got to talk about another important 300. We talked before about Venom being a subject of like not wanting to draw a certain costume and bring a costume into the way with 300.
Right.
You invented Venom basically out of wanting to draw Spider-Man in his proper form.
Right, the red and blue costume,
the
right?
Red and blue was your
the classic, right?
So Venom was basically made out of spite, and that's also kind of what Image represents in its own way. Of
we call it a happy accident, right? I guess I tell people, most of you will look at 300, Amazing Spider-Man 300, and say, "Oh my God, 300! That's the origin of Venom issue." I call it the can we get rid of that damn black costume so we can get back to the red and blue Spidey costume issue, right? Yeah. So I have a different perspective on it. But we knew that we were onto something when every time we brought that character back, people seemed to respond to him, right?
Yeah.
And we went, oh, my gosh, hey, you know what? Because the thing that was interesting back then was there wasn't this new era. You were getting like the new X-Men, the new Uncanny X-Men, and you were getting, Deadpool ended up coming in, and the X Factors and some other characters came on. So the superheroes there was like this new generation coming. But what struck me was there wasn't a new generation of villains, right? Because I go, all the good ones are still Doc Ock and Doctor Doom and Magneto and all, all the doctor names from the 60s that you go, what's the equivalent to those now, right? And so in an accidental way, Venom started sort of coming in and asserting himself over time of being sort of a villain on a high scale that people started to recognize, right? I wish there was 20 more of them.
Yeah.
That not Venoms, but like these characters that came out from the 90s and even in the 2000s that were comparable to the Doc Dooms and the Red Skulls and those kinds of ones that are just these vicious, the Jokers and the Riddlers. Like who's the modern day version of those?
It's so hard
right?
to find that test of time character.
Yeah, that's it.
So when you invented Venom, it was you wanting to draw the red and blue costume, which I love because now it's become one of the biggest characters in the world. Out of you said this happy accident.
Yeah, $1 billion happy accident.
Yeah, there are worse things.
Sony, you're welcome.
So this $1 billion happy accident, and I love that it appeared in 299. And that's where 300 is the number people think of. And now with Spawn, 301 is actually the number. So you actually dance around these anniversary numbers. It's not the Kirkman thought.
Yeah. Here, look. So let's talk about 301 for a minute.
Yeah.
What's sort of interesting, odd, and maybe it's just me, is that the record that I'm going to tie at 300 is a book that was a black and white independent book, creator-owned book called Cerebus that Dave Sim did.
Yes.
Dave Sim also, quite proudly, I could say, is a Canadian. I'm a Canadian. It's a bit of a head scratcher to me that the world's record was held by a Canadian and it's going to now be broke by another Canadian. I'm wondering about the other 122 countries as to what's happening to the work ethics.
You're slacking, America, and all.
And all, right? So somebody step up and do 400 issues. Come on, let's go.
Deadpool also Canadian. I'm calling you all out, America.
But the difference is, though, I don't know if you remember, Dave Sim said he was going to do 300 and quit.
Yeah.
And true to his word, he did it.
Right.
So now, to me, it's just now going to be more Cal Ripken Jr., game played streak. Once he got past Lou Gehrig's record, he just kept playing.
Right.
And so he didn't just beat it by one game. He kept going.
So there's no end in sight.
Every issue becomes the new record, right? So I just go. So whoever thinks they're going to get to 300, I go 300. That was so 15 years ago, right? So I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, it really is a very proud moment for me to just say that I started this, and 25, 30 years later, I'm still driving it. Right? That's it. Good, bad, or indifferent, we can have that conversation and debate another day.
Sure.
Right? But it's still the same human being doing it 30 years later. It's doable.
Yeah.
Right? It's doable.
Now, with a book that you're setting records literally every month going forward, is there anything you want to do with the character you feel like you couldn't do before? Or do you feel like it's just as viable now as it was ever, or more so?
Yeah. There's a few surprises that are going to happen in 300, 301.
Okay.
Right? Some visual hits, some power hits that are going to be there. And then, I'm going to try and see if I can't entice a few unexpected, surprising artists to come on board, maybe do a story arc here or there, right? I mean, look at it's incumbent upon us as a creative people, especially if you're going to do something with longevity. And Spawn, obviously, is one of the books got a lot of longevity. So you're going to have peaks and valleys of story, of art, of sales, of all of it, right? Because it just ebbs and flows, right? Superman, Batman, Spider-Man have gone through all the same sort of peaks and valleys. So it's incumbent upon us, the creative people, and for me, because I'm the owner of the the character itself, to make it, to give a reason for the consumer, the customer, to buy it, and the retailer.
Absolutely.
Right? I can't just say, hey, I've been here this long, you should be basically backing me up. I have to basically inspire them to basically want it. So I've been making a gallant effort the last couple of years, especially last year, to get people back on board, to at least sample Spawn again, because it may be different than what you thought you remembered it being, and then give them reasons to keep coming back.
Absolutely.
Right? So they'll go, oh my gosh, this is sort of a little bit different, or there's some cool stuff, or I didn't remember. And for the retailers who every month, and I understand, that life, they get that thick book that's got 10,000 items in it called the Diamond Preview.
Yep.
And it's easy to get into autopilot because you can't pay attention to everything in there. So what happens is easy for them to say, hey, I ordered 10 copies of that book, 10 copies, every month, 10 copies. No matter what's happening, good, bad, or indifferent, they'll order the 10, and so it's up to me to say, I think you should be ordering 15, right? So here's why. Here's the story, here's the artist, here's the writer, here's what's happening with the character, all of it, right? Yeah. And give them a reason to go, and jolt them out of it and say, oh yeah, that's right, Spawn, we used to buy more of that. Maybe we'll give it a bigger sample. And I know, even having that conversation with the retailers recently at the Retailer Summit, that from that conversation I had on the stage, the very next issue went up 50%.
That's perfect.
Not 5%, 50%. So glad handing and being aware of the retailers and the consumers at all times, not just sort of assuming they owe you something, is beneficial.
He's also a very public figure because of the movie and the TV show, and he's been in the limelight for a long time.
The toys.
McFarlane Toys set the precedent for the 90s toys, and you guys are doing another run with McFarlane Toys to celebrate this. Now, bringing it back in the public eye, is there any movement on the Blumhouse thing, or is that still in the same spot?
I'm currently rewriting it, because one of the differences with the movie is that in all my other businesses, I put my own money in. Yeah. So that rebel spirit can be there. The moment you start asking people for the money, they rightly so get a lot of food at the table, and they get to say yes and no. And they're not just going to say, hey, Todd, here's a bunch of money, you spend any way you see fit. I wouldn't do it myself. So,
right.
So I get it. So I'm just trying to maneuver through that system. I'm not the only guy that's ever tried to get something made in Hollywood that took a little bit longer than we would have liked, right? I'm anxious. I know Jason always going, Todd, it'll happen when it happens, right? Don't worry about it, because he's been through it dozens of times. So, but right now I just want to focus on getting to 300, 301 so that I can remind Hollywood again that you're missing out on the biggest, longest running creator-owned book in history. I think you should probably make this. And by the way, last time it opened up to 40 million or to 20 million, and it would be 40 million in today's dollars.
Yep.
So you're missing one, and we'll get it. But patience would just be part of it.
I love the cast, and I love that starting in October, you are going to be every month the record-setting book of all time, starting at 301, into 302, into 303, into forever. I'm so excited. Congratulations.
Yeah,
I can't wait to
read
read
it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.